Well, good morning, everyone. We are here for another C.U.T.E session, Champions Using Teams Effectively, where we come in an office hours approach, ask us anything, we geek out on Teams for a half hour. So happy to see everyone here this morning, and hopefully you came with questions or just came to hear what Stacy and I would just blabber on about. So yeah, I'm glad I see everyone's here. We kind of off camera, I guess. We're just having a discussion about, whiteboard. That's certainly still, people are still starting to use that and get used to it and things. But whether it's chat or mic, I will, ask if anybody did come today with any pressing question. No, you don't have to be pressing, but if you came with any particular question that you wanted to kind of throw out there again, either through coming off mute or just throwing it in the chat, now's a good time. If not, I think Stacy and I were thinking about talking about private or group chat versus channel chat. That's a conversation that's come up for both of us in a couple different among a couple different audiences, and kind of an interesting combo that maybe with some nuances that you might not have thought about. And let me share my screen and just kind of bring home what we mean here. So going to hit that, go here and go here. So what I'm talking about is this concept of having a chat, in this case with a team with multiple people in in group or private chat versus channel chat, having it here in a team. And so what I've seen is especially if an organization's new to Teams, they may begin their use of chat all within the private chat area. So they're not yet ready to create a bunch of teams, but this private chat concept is comfortable. Maybe it feels like Skype, and so they'll do their work here. Just lots of different group chats related to whatever they're doing. And even their team, call this, Team X, and all the chat is happening there. And so, day after day, just the ongoing conversation of that team is happening here in chat. And that certainly works. And I certainly like it for anyone new to Teams, an organization new to Teams, because it shows me you're not letting all the bells and whistles of Teams keep you from chat, right? I can kind of get when you go over to a team concept, lots of things going on here, and maybe it feels a little overwhelming. So sticking to the chat area, which is a little more simplified, I totally get that. What I then find, though, that over time, though, is you start to realize some of the things that you're missing, and maybe you don't realize them, but there are some things you're missing from the private chat concept that you would get in a Teams conversation, and in some ways you get everything that you would get here over in a channel conversation, plus some additional things, and that's kind of some of the nuances that we can talk about here. I think one of the big one, I don't know that this is the thing driving folks, but one of the big ones that you don't get in the channel chat is the pop out. So if by chance your ongoing conversation with your team, you just love having that popped out, maybe off to the side as you continue to do other work, I get that. That is a compelling, ability to kind of just have that off to the side. If you did transfer all of your team's chats over into a team and a channel, I mean, certainly you can have Teams up, in a window, but you don't get a pop out of this channel chat. So as I was thinking through it, I was like, that's one cool feature that you'd have to give up if you're trying to switch over from private to Teams. And I'll put it out there. I mean, you don't have to answer, but if there is anybody that's maybe does prefer private chat over channel chat, for a certain reason, maybe that pop out or something else. I'd love to, hear that, hear what some of those concepts are. While you're thinking about that, or maybe putting that in the chat, one of the things that, I think one of the big differences and one of the big drivers might be the privacy of the private chat, as it's called. Um, your team gets to chat here with membership very controlled, and you can kind of just say what you want, knowing that it's private, as the name implies. With the team, it's more that work out loud concept. While I could certainly make a team with just the right people, a lot of times we're in teams that maybe have an audience bigger than the people we want to chat with in a given moment, and we might not be comfortable with the conversation we want to have being seen by others. So it'd be great to have a world where all of my work conversations are, if you want to read it and you're not really part of the combos, so be it, you're on the team. That's kind of the approach I like to take. But I get that people do like to have a place, feel like they can talk privately. So I get that. Maybe that's one of the drivers that are out there as well. If there are any other drivers for private chat out there, feel free to chime in there.
One of the good things about the private chat is you can add people to it and then select, what level of history you want them to be able to access.
Yeah.
So that's helpful. I wrote in the chat that the pop-out is unforgiving, because it happens to me very frequently that in both the team and the private, that I'll begin typing a message, and I tend to be a little bit verby sometimes and get distracted before I hit send. And then and deciding I want to have it in a pop-out because I need to see something else on that screen, it erases all of the unsent text.
Which is interesting, because I've usually been surprised that, and maybe I haven't tried it with pop out, because I've started composing a chat and then gone to different places and teams and come back and it's still there, and it always surprises me. But I may not have tried that in an actual pop out. That's weird that would have a different behavior.
Yeah, especially if you've started to type the message in the main interface and then hit the pop out, it loses everything.
Yeah. So that's like typing something here and then like closing it, or just.
No, the other way, the inverse. That you're in the main
Oh.
interface.
Uh-huh.
Get halfway through it, decide you need to see something else in the team's environment, so you pop this message out to put it on a different monitor, and well, now see, in yours it worked.
Yeah, my very presence fixes all things. Because this is what I'm used to seeing is, so the pop out, or if I go somewhere else, blah blah blah, I go around and I come back and it's still there, and I've always liked that and always been surprised. So, but yeah, the pop out, at least in this case, seems, well, actually, no. Look at that. That's different text. This is what I started typing in the pop out. It's different from what I was composing there. So you're right. So if I get rid of that, close this, and blah 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 blah, pop it out. Yeah, there's two different caches there or something.
And the other one is if you happen to hit the chat command up in the command line of the search bar and start typing there, that doesn't save it either. That'll lose everything, even if you go someplace else.
Yeah. Yeah, and then I go, yeah, and then that's gone. Yeah. Interesting. Little nuance there. So the unforgiving pop out. Okay. Good to know.
Yep, I wrote that one down.
For those of us easily distracted, it's a curse.
Yeah. So it's almost like you have to commit to that pop out. If this is a conversation you're gonna pop out, leave it popped out. It will remember your popped out message, but not your. That's interesting. So that is different. Two different composed messages. Interesting.
The other anomaly in this is that if you're in a private group chat and then you decide to schedule a meeting, it doesn't contain that in the private group chat. It starts its own meeting, and we'll have another chat feed for that. So if you instinctively tell people to put it in the chat feed, you have to specify which one. And I believe we talked about it before, how they don't reconcile one another or merge, kind of thing.
Yeah, because as we're seeing here, this is a ongoing private, group chat here with Nestor. Let's see, this was just Nestor and me. Okay, here's one. Nestor, I guess Deborah or Joanna and me. And so let me get this out of there. Yeah, I can fire up a meeting here, but it is just a one-off meeting with the three of us. So yeah, it'll have its own chat. And so if I kind of even start there from the difference, right? So if we were committed to chatting in a channel, then yes, now here, if I were to create, schedule a new meeting, a channel meeting, then yes, it's going to be here in the channel. And ultimately that channel chat will be contained here, just like, I thought I might have an example in here, but just like whatever chat this one might have generated. So yeah, you get to keep all the chat, whether it's meeting or whether it's just in the channel, you get to keep it all in one place.
The other nuance in there is I've scheduled a meeting in the channel calendar, and so that serves its purpose beautifully. However, I've now made it a recurring meeting, and so any of the subsequent chat or files or anything, or even posts, end up being appended to that original meeting. And so in terms of the sequence of that, when you arrive at the channel, you're not always seeing the most recent activity because it's nested much further up in the feed, because it was, at this point back in July that I had scheduled the first meeting.
Right. Yep. Indeed. Yes. So the meeting concept in general is probably one big example. If you were trying to chat with your team, but also trying to schedule and or contain meeting assets in a same space, at that point, you'd want a team, because you're just going to have a lot more options there than trying to have it here in the private chat. You can certainly, you got a nice convenient button to schedule it, but you're really scheduling just these one-off meetings.
I think that button is what the deceptive part of it is, because it leads you towards the assumption that they're going to be together.
Yeah. And to your point, adding people, but giving them a particular amount of the chat history could be interesting as well. So speaking of the chat history, when with this concept, right, you got this just single line of chat. If you want to go back to history, it's just a lot of rewinding to get back there. One of the things about history, though, that I think gets hindered by the group chat is these messages or posts, I don't get my copy link to thing here. So over in the Teams channel chat, if I go to a conversation like this one, maybe this one here is really important. Everybody should know that I told Joanne, or that I said this is a great combo. With the three dots, I get a copy link. I can go to somewhere else and and say, you should check this out, and then put that link there, right? Takes that person, go ahead and post that, directly to that conversation, goes yellow right there. I don't get to do that here. And so if somebody said something really great 3 weeks ago, here in the chat, I've got to just say, hey, scroll up, 3 weeks worth to see, what Joanna said about the so-and-so, or find it myself, maybe and copy and paste it. So just not as elegant. So I really love the copy link for a particular post, especially if that post, the example I used was pretty basic, but there could be someone's post that is big and full of great info, or maybe a key piece to a conversation. And so getting a link to that, sometimes even putting that in an email just to bring somebody into the conversation. But that's a real key one for me. Again, especially, not so important if you're using that chat to decide where to go to lunch, but if it's for work assets and, people are saying some significant things or making a decision in a particular post, that copy link really becomes, a little more significant. So that's another one. And I see a question about the status button. I can't set a duration for the available status. Changes to yellow while you're at the computer and haven't touched anything. That's interesting. So the status there being clicking here, and our status is here. It sounds like yours is kind of going yellow in times you wouldn't expect. So this duration, I guess, is not getting it done or not working for you. I mean, that may just be a glitch there because certainly gives us options for setting.
I don't know. If you look at the status drop down, I think what she's talking about is that available. You were on it. Like if you drill into duration again.
Oh, okay. So go here, duration.
Yeah, available is an option there. So she was wanting to set it to available and be able to say, hey, leave it as available for, the next 3 hours or whatever. And because available is not on that drop down.
But that may be because maybe Teams is saying, but then what do I set you to after you're not available, right? Because if I set be right back for 3 hours, it knows to hit me back to available or whatever my actual status is. Maybe I wonder if that's
based on whatever the calendar says my status should be.
Yeah. So it should revert to, I wonder if that's, maybe that's not a glitch. Maybe that's by design, just by the nature of that available. That's interesting.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. In my mind, I'm thinking it's by design if I think about it a little.
Yeah. And I was going to go look and see what the active, inactive status time was. I don't know off the top of my head. It sounds like it could be,
there is a link
5 minutes.
Yeah, there is a link out there related to presence because I remember looking it up for a customer that had a similar issue. It does describe, and I don't know if I could find it quickly, but it does describe some of those things. And but from what I remember about it, it probably isn't going to answer our particular question. I think it's this one, user presence, and this was it because it went through each one. So this might be I'll put this in the chat. It might be worth looking at because at least they kind of go through each type of presence, even some admin settings and whatnot. So I'll put this in the chat here in case that might help. Okay. Real briefly, let me just kind of go through some of the other differences, I think, between the two. The other big one for me is, again, this is one single thread. I can't have a sub conversation in here. So yes, we're the Project X team, but today, we may want to talk about the Project X, PowerPoint we're working on in a channel that can just be a new conversation, even with its own subject line, or something and blah, blah, blah. And then people can start to reply to that knowing the conversation they're talking about. And if a new chat here comes up, it doesn't hurt that conversation versus in the chat, the private chat area, the one person that comes in that isn't interested in talking about the PowerPoint, their post is now in the thread and, okay, are you talking about what we're talking about? Are you starting up a new combo? That can get a little interesting. When that does happen, I have seen people start to utilize the reply feature, which I need to find a chat from another person. And since these are all demo users, Let me go become, is this Nestor here? It's the admin. But the you can go to a post in a private chat and hit reply. So yeah, so this is Deborah going up here, and I think this is a meeting. Let's try this one here. Where is my reply? What am I doing wrong here, Stacy? Now I'm all messed up. Trying to find.
Yeah, I'm looking at mine too to see if I have one that's set up in a way that I can.
Yeah, unless that hasn't. Maybe has that not hit GCC yet? Is that my problem?
Oh.
It may not have hit GCC yet. What I was expecting to see that is in commercial is going to a post and there's a reply piece that basically does what I talked about in a previous video. I talked about doing this manually, and it does it for you. This concept of taking that post, kind of putting it like this and putting a little gray around it. It also conveniently actually links back to that post as well, but then I can proceed to talk here with anyone reading this post knowing exactly which post I'm talking about. So that's pretty key in a group chat conversation, because this will help me figure out whether somebody is talking about the current conversation or something else. So if it hasn't hit GCC, which it kind of feels like it hasn't, then that makes the group chat concept even a little more cumbersome, right? To not have that reply feature.
So it is on the roadmap,
okay,
as in development with an August date. Reply to a specific message in Teams.
Okay. Well, that's good to know, because yeah, I thought that was out there. I may fire up my commercial tenant just in case we want to see that. But, so yeah, so that's another one, is this whole reply to concept. Again, in the channel conversation, it is much easier to figure out and have sub conversations within the channel. Where am I here? So yeah, so that's another difference there. And then I am a fan of working out loud. So again, I do, even if the conversation is something that is maybe just for 2 people out of the 10 in the team, I'm just a fan of letting everyone see it, because you never know what insight someone else might bring to the table. So, but I know there are different opinions about that one. So some people brought up which one is easier to see. Kind of, again, that's preference, right? Seeing the red bubble pop up on chat and something going, bold. You may like that. In general, you get the similar thing here, but I guess with way more channels that could be presented here, maybe that could get lost. I've always said, if you got some channel where your day-to-day chat is happening, that's probably worth pinning so that it stays up here and goes bold right there where you can see it. So it's something to keep in mind. And then the @mentioning too, being able to @mention the channel, which is sometimes a little stronger. Well, you really don't have that concept in the group chat. And I use that sometimes when I really kind of want to make sure it really hits people's feeds, something that everybody needs to see. So you get more @mention capabilities here. And what I'm talking about here is just kind of saying @team. I could mention the whole team, or I could just mention the channel itself here @ audit, right? What I can do on the private chat though is just @mention people, but no, there's no concept of @mentioning the whole group chat per se. So, all right. Okay, I see the question about C.U.T.E. Yeah, so C.U.T.E is out there and needs to be enabled. Awesome. Try to think in our last minute or so here if there's any. So we talked about sub conversations. And then, of course, I mean, you do have some tabs here, but I would imagine. Oh, actually, I was in the wrong place. In your chat here, let's go to this one. I do have tabs I can add, but you can just even kind of see here a few less of the native ones here. I don't know of the third party if there's some that are only for channel. I'd imagine so. So, just from a bells and whistles perspective, you're probably going to miss out on some things, maybe from a tab perspective, or maybe from some things going on down there that you would get, in a channel. So yeah, so some caveats. So again, certainly I never try to squash anyone's dreams when they're doing their work here, because at least it's in Teams and not an email, which should have its advantages. But I just try to point out that there could be some advantages from taking the plunge into the team. And I can't think of too much other than a pop out that you lose here. It's all about gain. As long as you're okay with maybe a little more exposure, if this team is bigger than the people that you want to chat with. So I think the last thing I'd say about this, there is a book that I read back in the day that I like. Paste here, Adopt and Embrace. So this might be one worth looking into. And in there they just kind of talk about some of their, I think they got like the 10 P's for collaboration, and one of them is principles. And really it's just this idea, whether you're going to do channel chat or group chat, the idea is just to agree on it as a team. As a team, think about the pros and cons, and then decide, here's the spot where we're going to do it. We've decided we like the private chat, or we've decided we like the Teams chat, but just so there's agreement, and and everyone's voice is heard in that concept. So something to keep in mind there. So we're at time here. Any final thoughts for the good of the order?
No, just thank you as usual.
Yeah.
The last couple of chat things in here have been really about the apps, and I don't know, maybe that might be a topic for someday, because I know I just commented to Stacy that it appears as though they're multiplying in our environment, which is a good sign that they're finally being turned on. But I'm not really quite sure if they're turned on or if they're just more available, especially the ones that say Microsoft Corporation on them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it really depends on how that's being centrally managed by IT, Jim, because we have different categories for the IT admins to address how they handle apps. One is their first-party Microsoft apps. And generally, IT is usually pretty friendly with enabling all of those as we publish them. But they don't have to. They can restrict them, they can block them, they can enable them piecemeal. It's really up to them. But usually, even in the government cloud, the first-party apps are embraced and enabled by default.
So just for clarification, a first-party, no, now you can't even repeat it. The term that you just used, those are automatically included as part of the licensing. There's no additional fee for those, or?
Generally, they are part of the Microsoft 365 subscription that you guys would have as what we call our G3 licenses, G5 licenses. You'd be able to freely use those apps as they're allowed by your agency. And the general, at least all the customers that I contact, and probably to Ricardo, I would say between 85 and 95%, they're 100% on board and allowing all Microsoft apps. It's the third-party apps where they start contracting and being more strategic about what they enable, and they can do that app by app by app. They don't have to enable anything as a set I guess.
And what
Right.
isn't necessarily true, to your point, is will that first party app automatically be turned on because it's first party? That isn't necessarily true. So sometimes that is the case. Others it is not. So in the government, the third party apps are off by default. If the admin did nothing, they're off by default. First party apps may or may not be off. Kind of depends on the app and how that rollout occurs. So yeah, if you're wondering, is this available? You never know. You got to ask the admins.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, knowing which ones are just a matter of a flip of a switch versus an additional, procurement is another thing. So, I fully expected when we got Yammer in our environment that there would have been an immediate Teams integration, and I have yet to see it. Is that because that's a switch that hasn't been flipped, or is it because it's not as apparent as I might have thought that it would be?
It may actually not. We have a Yammer integration for Teams commercially. What I'm not sure, and I'll do a check on quickly for you, Jim, is if it's available in the government cloud. And you guys at your agency are very unique in having the ability to use Yammer. That's typically our government customers aren't taking advantage of that one. So the fact that you have Yammer, you're in a you're I just haven't tested whether or not the Yammer app that we have available as a first party app is something that's GCC available to grab. You're
It's
clicking
not
around,
being.
Ricardo. Are you looking for it?
I was going to look a little, I was going to do two things for the good of the recording. I was going to try to do that, check that whole reply thing. But yeah, in terms of Yammer,
I'm not seeing it in the admin center.
yeah.
So it could just be that it's not.
Yeah, so there's Yammer. I'm in a commercial client here.
Okay.
There's Yammer Communities as a tab. So that's at least one integration. I think. Oops. I think the other one would be. Yeah, it's over here on the left rail. So that's kind of that integration that we were talking about. And again, it's a commercial tenant.
Now, I did click in here, and what really kind of prompted it was that there was one called Bulletins, and it was read all company communication posts in a central place, which is really what they're utilizing Yammer for. So I just, maybe that is a GCC thing.
Yeah, that would be my initial thought.
Yeah, and the Bulletins app is one of those recently released sample apps that is considered first party and is available for use. So interesting.
It's timely because we locally had a meeting the other day about trying to come up with some type of a plan for internal communications, because it's becoming more and more unwieldy as email refuses to relinquish its control, or at least from a user's perspective anyway. But yeah, and then Yammer really didn't help matters any by introducing yet another channel without really defining it. So
I'd be interested in having a conversation with you if you haven't checked out Company Communicator, which is yet another option that we have. It's an app template that will allow central messages to get published as chats to everyone in the agency. I'm seeing a lot of interest from other customers in that, Jim. So if that's something you want to talk about offline, I'd be happy to take you through the overview and see if that might answer, because it being able to deliver those messages via a card in a chat is really powerful and comes together pretty quickly.
If we could only get people past so you said it was via a video and you could post
you could embed an image or a video into the chat message itself, and then the app will send that card. So it's usually like a title and then a body and then some sort of visual image out as a chat to everyone in the agency at the same time. So imagine getting a holiday greeting from the secretary, right, via chat in Teams, and have it connect folks to, I don't know, any other supporting positive messaging that the secretary might want to share out. Also think of it as a way to issue surveys or calls to action of some kind. Like the typical use case scenario I've heard agencies really get excited about is like perhaps HR could leverage it to deliver open enrollment type messaging that gives real-time information, and then the call to action via a link from the message they can launch out to whatever SharePoint site or whatever HR site that's being managed with the latest and greatest information around those initiatives.
We may have a great aspirational communication plan, but the reality is that we have email and we have our intranet. And the intranet is internally maintained and not very dynamic. It's compliant, but it's not dynamic. And so I would see something like that would certainly fit in. In fact, the secretary is already doing that through the communications, but they're emailing it to people. You know, and then HR, yes, absolutely, would be great, and it would be such to their benefit if they could incorporate some type of AI into the process, because yeah, it's basically if you want a service from HR, you have to submit a ticket for it and be able to navigate the labyrinth of options to be able to get it to the right person,
right?
To be able to get a response. And to me, in this day and age of hyper personalization, if you're talking about trying to be obsessively focused on an employee experience, that level of friction is not a positive experience.
Right. Well, and you're trying to tackle readership issues too, right? If all of the agency communications are being sent out through email and they have piles of email that they're addressing for all of their support folks that they work with all day, every day, it's hard to distinguish those messages. You know this. So the readership, when it lands in Teams chat and they get that automatic notification, they have that little red circle that tells them they have something new to look at. The readership for those key messages just soars, and you have a whole new level of engagement. And at your agency, I happen to know that there is strong engagement already in Teams, so you can take advantage of that audience already being there and having.
It's not as strong as you might think that it is.
Oh, come on. We're getting close. We're working on it little by little.
Well, which side of Teams are you talking about? The private group chat, or are you talking about actually being a member of a team?
Well, in this particular instance, it would just need to be chat, honestly, to get that message read, which would be the goal of communications in the first place, right? To get the messages that are. So would they be sending
it to individuals on the individual side of the house, or would they be sending it to channels and
they would be. They have options in the app to target those messages appropriately, and they can do it to a channel. Certainly that would make sense, especially in your area of focus with like new employee orientation and things. You could target people who are already plugged into a team, but you can send it as a chat message to everyone at your organization.
I don't know if you guys can see that.
In addition,
that's what I'm sharing on the screen there.
Yeah, thank you for digging that out of the demo that you have deployed. I think that's a good visual for Jim.
Remedial education for Jim.
Well, no, I mean, this is a custom app, Jim. So this is definitely taking taking Teams and communications marriage to
Yep.
the next level. I mean, it really is. And it would require some deployment from IT and some engagement from HR and communications. I mean, as far as adoption goes, it's a significant change and lift. But the payoff is that those key messages can be delivered and touch everyone or a select group in a more effective way. And that's why we're seeing traction with this particular app. Now, I will say, before I let you go, that there is an Azure component here. So there is some cost associated. Now, granted, it on the large scale of things with an organization your size, it's a very minimal fee, but there's Azure storage that's being leveraged in the crafting of these messages. So I'd want to make sure that that was key in any discussion you have. But we can certainly follow up, and I say for sure, let's keep the conversation going. And with so much in Microsoft, there's more than one way to do things. So it, depending on what your outcomes are or your intentions are, you know, I would love to be a part of the conversations that help you make sure that you're using the right thing for the right outcome. And maybe there's more than one right way to do it, but certainly, you know, there are tools that are larger lifts from an adoption standpoint, and ones that you can take and have smaller bites at. And perhaps that's our best approach with your current need, is to tackle those things with these more simple things that we can deploy, like the company communicator app deployment versus Yammer deployment is that's two universes apart, right? So let's figure out perhaps the shortest route to payoff and then scale from there.
So we'll keep hammering away at it.
Great.
Thank you both.
I'm game.
It's making me look forward to Fridays for yet another reason.
Yay!
Awesome.
Have a good week.
That's very reassuring, Jim. We appreciate it so much.
Yeah, absolutely.